place. We're going to do this like the businesses that I know and helped grow. We're going to run our food truck business and catering business that way. And everyone, like, I got to tell you, like 8 out of 10 emails or leads that come into us, the first response is, thanks so much for getting back to me so quickly. And I tell everyone, I go, do you see that? That is what happens, you know? So it's like they haven't even read anything and they already want to work with us.
What's going on, Pizza Fam? Look, I appreciate each one of you for listening to this show, listening to this episode. Before we get back to it, I wanted to tell you about my favorite product right now, Todd's Curry Sauce. I met these guys at the Florida Restaurant Show, Pizza Tomorrow Summit, and I'm telling you, ever since I tried that sauce, I have been putting it on everything in the shop. Chicken wings, pizza, you've seen the pizzas, chicken sandwich, salad dressing, like we've been putting Todd's Curry Sauce on everything, and I'm here to give you a special deal, special offer. Go to their website, toddscurrysauce.com, use code Pizza King, and get 10% off your next order. I promise you, you only need to try it one time. It's going to be the best curry sauce you ever tasted in your life. You're going to start putting it on all kinds of stuff in your shop, even at home. I got a bottle in the pantry here at the house. I got a bottle at the shop. Elliot, Todd, I need another bottle because I'm putting it everywhere. I'm putting it on everything. So go check it out. Use code Pizza King and get 10% off your next order. Peace. Let's get back to it.
What's going on, Pizza Fam? Welcome back to the Pizza King podcast. I'm your host, Tyrell Reed, joined by special guest Ric Gruber from Billy Briggs Pizza. Rick, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you taking the time to come on and tell us about who you are and what you got going on up in the Chicago area. What's happening at Billy Briggs?
Yeah, so we are the first fast casual wood-fired pizzeria in Illinois. We're the original. We are in our 5th year this year, so it's a big year for us with
Congratulations.
Yeah, celebrating the 20th year. We also have 7 brick and mortar locations now around the Chicagoland area. We are open to expanding with franchising out of this market. And then we also have 7 mobile units. So between our large scale trucks that people kind of know us for, the all glass experience, and then we have a few trailers to also support those depending on, you know, different venues and spaces. You can fit different sizes in there, and it just calls for different things sometimes depending on the event. So we have a nice little fleet of 4 different trailers as well, where they need to go and where we need to put them. And then we have our ice cream trucks. That fleet is growing right now. Where, you know, the additional thing was the ice cream truck to support the catering, and then retrofitting the stores to include the ice cream. And then our newest location opened with the full ice cream parlor inside of it. And now we are actually in the process of opening our very first standalone Mujo's ice cream. So, you know, we're going to test how well that does on its own in the market. And, you know, so we're always just playing around.
My goodness. That's like, so I'm hearing you got brick and mortar going, you got food trucks and trailers, and we got ice cream on, you know, mobile ice cream and just did brick and mortar ice cream. How do you control operations at that level?
Control, I think, is an interesting word to use. Manage, probably better. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's everybody out there that's had any level of success that likes to share that information or put that out there. It applies across whatever type of business you're talking about, organizational management and structures and systems. So whether you're selling widgets or selling pizza, the fundamentals are sort of the same inside the game of business, where, you know, now how that looks and the key people that you need, it may vary depending on your industry. So for ours, it's pretty specific. And, you know, we are building a team, and we know, and unless you're going to take on a large investment or debt, it's very difficult to grow that team all at once. So for us, we've built the team over a period of time based on, you know, whatever is the most immediate focus, need, and where we're going to allocate whatever our limited resources are. You know, everyone has a budget, or should. And we say, well, this is how much we have to grow, and how much do we need to grow in order to add the other piece that we're also looking to add on. So, you know, you can never spend your way out of scarcity. You can't do that. So you can only grow your way out. And so that's how I always look at it is, we can either be a profitable, very small business that pays a ton in taxes, or we can take that money and reinvest it right like every year to grow, to take some of that organizational and operational stress off of the current team. And so to me, you can only grow your way out of those problems. So that's why we're always looking to grow and expand, because I feel like the operational stresses that you're alluding to get smaller or easier to manage as you get larger. So you have more of them, but they become easier to take on because you can now have the team and the infrastructure where those headaches are being taken on by a person, and you can actually afford that person in that position because of the size of the organization.
You feel like, that's kind of the mistake that folks make when they're going back to years ago when you were one and it's time to go from 1 to 2. They think, hey, I can just do what I'm doing here over there.
Yeah, I think I told this story quite a bit because it's funny. One of my first jobs that was not for a parent was delivering pizzas for a local pizzeria in my town. My cousins were doing it, and they said, "Hey, you should come join us here. Like, we're making a ton of cash." And we're like 16, 17, and 18 years old, like just whipping around our town delivering pizzas. It was a great job. I got my driver's license, and the next day I was delivering pizzas. So the world is
Dang.
very different today than it was then. Like, that was the greatest thing ever. But I remember the owners of that pizzeria saying to me, like, you either can go big, or you got to play small. Because he said he saw, because I always would ask, like, how don't you want to open up anymore? Like, you guys are crushing it here. And he said he learned his lesson from other people he knew in the business, which was they would try to open up and they'd have like maybe 3, maybe 4. He said, and the weight of trying to do that, like what it required was more than the business could afford. So it just ended up crumbling the entire business. And so I've always kept it in the back of my head where you either want to stay small or play big, because if you get caught somewhere in the middle, you'll usually bankrupt yourself. And because you're not gonna be able to afford the team that you need, so you're gonna take on everything yourself, which is number one, not feasible, impossible. And even if it is, it's only for a short period of time. It's not gonna last because you're gonna burn out.
Yeah. What was the first signal that Billy Bricks was ready to go and play big?
Well, I don't think that there was like one moment in, I've been in the full time here now for 9 years, and then just took over about 3 years ago, for the entire company. And early on, it wasn't prepared for that, and there was a lot of time in between. The first store opened in 2005, and after the first lease was up, which was a very short lease because we didn't know if they were gonna, if it was gonna work or not.
Would they do like a 5 or
Yeah,
10?
yeah, like
The
a 4 or
5 and a
5 year
5.
lease. Yeah, and
Okay.
so in the middle of the night, they stole the oven basically out of our own restaurant, and we moved it down the street to a larger location up the block. So that was really the first growth moment, was going from 1,000 square feet with 11 seats to a 2,000 square feet with like 40-seat cafe. And so that was the first moment of growth, which was, we are never going to make any money here, even though we have a great business going, because we can't get enough people in sitting down. And back then there was no delivery either. Like, you were either delivering yourself. There was no apps. There was no Uber. There was no app
Yeah.
store. The iPhone wasn't out.
Not even really online ordering at that point.
No, there was none of that. So, it was very old school in the sense of like, it was traditional, like phones, this and that. It was pick up, carry out, and dine in. That was it for us. So the idea was, unless we get a bigger dining room, we're never going to make any money, because as many people as want our food can't actually enjoy it here because we don't have any space for them. So the first growth moment was, okay, we have proof of concept. People really like this, but we're kind of maxed out due to our space. So the first growth moment was to move down the street. From the time we started to the time we opened the second store was 7 years. So it wasn't like today either. There's a lot of resources out there now to support not only the restaurant community, but specifically the pizza industry. There was no podcast where people could learn. There was no these conferences where people could go, the ability to go find vendors, find ovens, all that stuff was incredible. It was an incredible like barrier to entry, and not an intentional one. It just the access to information and people in the space was very limited. So, the pizza business was more of a legacy business rather than like everyone just thinking, you know what, I'm going to jump into pizza. And everyone's always loved pizza, but it wasn't always the sexy thing that it is today, where like the pizza makers are now like rock stars, and it's like if the pizza wasn't good, it's probably because the chef didn't have enough tattoos. It's just one of those things, right? Like the world has changed, the industry's changed. So now, that the growth took a lot longer than I think if we had started, today. I think also just getting our feet underneath us and all of that. Like my dad found initially like the right partner to expand with, and the second store was such a hit that they immediately thought, let's open another one. So then the third one came like within about a year of the second one opening, and I think that's where then it was like the what everyone talks about when you go from 1 to 2 is manageable yourself, and then when you go from 2 to 3, your business changes. That absolutely happened, and from that point, it was like another 5 years before the next store opened.
Just
So,
trying to fix operations, get systems in place.
and my dad being a very pen and paper type of guy because he's older, and old school in what he was doing, the technology aspects were not really getting integrated. And to be fair, a lot of the softwares and stuff that you have now weren't really developed. So it was harder to scale quickly because you didn't have these things that you could make digital and spread it fast. And so, whether that be training, inventory systems, like all these things that are available to us now, even a startup cost on our POS line item budget to like open up a new restaurant was like 25 grand back then.
It's
Right. When it was like
like a 4 station, 25 grand. Goodness.
yes, you had Aloha and or NCR, and it was like 25 grand to set up this like junk that you couldn't even do anything with. And it was like set in stone once you had it because like changing anything was impossible. Um, so all those things like existed as barriers to fast growth. So, fast forward now, we open up another store and it's like, oh, now we got Square and it's like 2 grand and the whole thing is set up. And sometimes we're even just like financing it through like some of our processing fees for the first year. There's like you're basically paying nothing out of pocket to do this, nothing to do that. This is free. You got Google Suite now. You got all these things, and you're like, this is unbelievable. So it just made it a lot faster to be able and cheaper to do things, and that allowed us to sort of escalate that. And then we opened up 3 stores in like a year.
What
So
what did it take to, to adopt those new technologies and those new processes? Because even though they were available, a lot of folks weren't ready to make that shift or make that change.
I think you have to have somebody with a mentality like I have, and like I think anyone can learn it and learn that this is what you have to do. But fortunately for me, it's more of like a natural thing because, like, I really enjoy reading. I enjoy studying. I always liked school. I did a lot of school. I'm a lawyer. Like I love to read and learn and be in the practice of business. So constant learning and evolution of what you're doing is something that I really enjoy. So I don't think of it as like, oh man, we have to change these things we've always done, even if they're things I put in place. I always like being, a step ahead and seeing what's coming and working on those over time to adapt to them. So that part of it was really, more of like in my DNA and making it part of the company where it's like, no, we never get tied to an idea or a way for so long that it becomes outdated. We're always looking to improve and see what's out there and what's coming and trying to fix things. But you prioritize those, right? Like, I'm not big on changing things that have no reason to be changed because there are some of those, right? Now, when we get customer feedback surveys and things that we see operationally where I'm like, well, it seems to me that these numbers are always off. Let's just say labor. Well, we need to look at the tools that we're using and figure out why there's an information gap and an you know, actionable content that we're getting to our managers to make the adjustments. So if they're not, first of all, you have to track it. Then if they can see that there's an issue, you have to figure out why there's not action being taken to correct. And if that's because there's a gap in what our systems are creating, we want to make that as smooth as possible. Now, so for a while, we might do that manually and then figure out how we customize, train, however you want to call it, our softwares we're using to deliver those things on a very quick basis, whether that be daily, weekly, monthly, and have actions tied to those. And then you take that a step further and say, okay, if these are the key indicators for our success, and these are the places we want our managers really to be focusing on, now we work on going backwards and saying, okay, so we're going to tie these like 10 points. Each one of these results into a different piece of, maybe the bonus structure. So, everything kind of works together, and you go, well, how do we put us all in the same boat, rowing different oars inside of the same canoe, essentially. And so you gotta tie everyone together, but it starts with those things. And then you can only do so much. So I think that's the biggest thing, is the patience to know, like, you want to fix everything and make everything perfect, but everything takes time. So you take the ones that are going to have the greatest impact and you knock those out first, and you work your way down.
I love it. And what I also know is that communication plays a huge role in that, right? How do you find the right balance between over communication and, getting things to the people as they need them, getting the message to the person that needs to hear it?
So I'm definitely someone who would fall into the side of not communicating enough because I don't like to do it. So, it's not something that I'll never be accused of over communicating, that's for sure. But I find that creating systems around your communication, and I'll keep going back to that, systems. So the way we do, like, I was working on right before I got in here, my weekly rundown email that I send out to all management and leadership, which is basically a recap from the previous week. Now, at the end of the month, we do the previous week and then the monthly recap and then what's coming. That's always in that email. Now, there's some things that some probably skim through and look for just what's relevant to them, but they get to see a snapshot of the whole company and see kind of how we're breaking down and looking at everything as a whole, and then giving them key takeaways and things to work on for the next week. And can sometimes say, like, hey, we've been talking about this now for 3 weeks and I haven't seen any positive movement. Like, that has to change, or we are going to have there is going to be an over communication here on this issue, because I'm repeating myself. So I find that making that a system where that is part of it, where it's a part of my work schedule, which is I have to deliver this every Monday, has helped make sure that there's at least a very broad summary of the whole company and what's going on, events, marketing initiatives, all those types of things in one place that my team can count on. That whether you hear from me or not during the course of that particular week, you are going to hear from me on Monday about how the last week went. Now, you mix that in with on-site visits and from operations, from myself, from marketing, from whomever, on a weekly basis, rotating throughout the store. Some people, it's a little more predictable because they'll put themselves onto their schedule so they know operations is coming. For me, because my schedule is, kind of all over the place, I'll go based on wherever I have other things going on, and I will pop in and then work from those locations for the day and see what's going on there, see what I see what I like, see what I don't like that I'm seeing, and then get some face-to-face time to go over what's going
Yeah.
on with them, how they think things are going, what do they think of the last week's email, because a lot of times that's what I'll see, is that I won't get a reply necessarily to the email right away. But when I pop in the store, they'll say, hey, so about
I got
last
the
week's
email.
email,
Yeah.
I wanted to actually talk to you about a few of these things. And so, that comes up. So that's a good reason to get into the stores and see everything and be able to have those face-to-face conversations. So most people will have, especially management, leadership will have face-to-face time with me almost every day during the course of the week, whether it's through a video call, a phone call, text, whatever. Like, we're talking constantly, and that makes up about 7 people.
On your leadership team. So is that all above store, like area
Yes.
managers, marketing folks? Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm talking to them on a daily basis. And
And
if I'm
then
not,
they're
it's
they're then
because
communicating with their teams. They should be
correct.
communicating with their teams every day
Correct.
after that, right?
Now, below that level, like whether that's territory or management, like store level management, each person probably gets time with me at least 2 to 4 times a month.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good.
So, as we
And
grow,
yeah,
that
you get
part
to
will
be
be a little less
effective.
feasible. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think like using technology and saying like, well, I don't have time to drive up to this store today. If I feel that there's something really going on, or I feel like there's been too long of a gap in us communicating like face to face, we could just do this. We could FaceTime.
Yeah. Well, post COVID, there's just no excuse anymore, right? Like we all learn how to work remote. We learn how to stay in communication. There's no more excuses at this point.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the positives too that came out of COVID was people's flexibility or willing requirement to adapt to a lot of these things because you didn't have a choice has made a lot of these things more mainstream, and it does take away a lot of the excuses for why you can't get together, why you can't have a meeting. And also it's a lot more freeing, right? Like if I know that I have a jam-packed day, I I won't say, well, we can't have the meeting because I'm not going to be able to get there because I got all this other stuff going on today. Because no, we're going to do the meeting just like this. It's just as effective. And then from there, I'll go on doing the rest of that stuff and save us all an hour of, round trip travel, which I think just makes you more efficient if have a team that's bought in and is willing to adapt those things.
I absolutely love it. And I love weekly review because it gives you the opportunity to actually adapt. Like monthly's great. Like you need monthly for high level stuff, but weekly gives us a chance to fix it before the month's over, right?
And I think that was something that was a game changer for us that started about 3 years ago when we went down the path of we are really going to create a leadership team and we are really going to focus on systems that are company wide rather than store by store in a way. Well, this is how we do it here. This is how we do it there. No, that was a really hard process, and it took a couple of years to really flush all that out or flesh all that out, or whatever the euphemism is, to get things where we're like, hey, if you're not on board with this, it may be time that because this is what we're doing, and it's really important for us as we continue to grow to be able to have this. And so there's so much that goes on now that you could take for granted that it has always been this way, but it really hasn't. It's only been a few years, but it's really made the idea of growth and the possibility for it, very realistic and given us a better chance to succeed as we decide to expand and grow again.
What outside of, big two, what's your most telling metric that you're tracking and sharing with the team every week?
So a big thing for us is obviously our cost of goods. So we're tracking, labor and labor efficiency and, cost per labor hour. It's really important. It's probably the one that we struggle the most with because it involves people. When you cut a product or order less of it or cut something out, there's no feelings involved with a can on the shelf, but there a lot of times, you're dealing with like actual people. And so movement in those things can be a little bit trickier. Um, so obviously, cost of goods, inventory, labor, those things are the main ones that we're tracking. And then we separate paper goods and all the disposable stuff. It's still in the final total, but we make it a separate category just because it shows us how, whether it's the food that's driving up our costs or if it's disposables and things. And then we can go target contracts and, vendors and try to figure out what's going on and make adjustments there to figure out first where the issue is. Aside from that, the number one thing that we're tracking on a daily basis that is addressed in real time and then regrouped upon, and then we decide how we want to make real changes going forward if you start to see certain things in bunches, is going to be our feedback surveys and summaries and reviews. So that's a really important metric, and that sentiment there is very important to obviously to our success. And there's things that we sort of have on our radar that we feel might be things we need to work on. And when customers are giving feedback, they give you like the reinforcement to go, okay, so what we thought might be a minor thing is clearly something that, although we have a lot of happy guests, clearly this is a pain point that we have the ability to eliminate. It's not, I don't like that your store doesn't have enough parking. Well, there's really nothing that we can do about the parking situation. But if people are consistently saying things like, I wish that if your the order timing was going to change, whether that be faster or take a little bit longer than you expected, that you would give me updates in real time. That's something that when we have guessed a lack of satisfaction or a lower rating coming in, is across the board, every location. Now, is it every customer all day, every day? No. But if we're seeing it multiple times a week per location,
Time to
say
take
you
note
serve
of
a
it. Yeah.
thousand, you serve 1,000 guests, but 5 say this, and 5 times that many locations, and that happening on a regular basis, you go, this is something that obviously, when things aren't working, creates guest dissatisfaction. And there is a technology fix to this. So we need to figure out what is the best solution for us, test them, research them, do some demos and figure out what we're going to implement to take that away. Because you go, okay, but that might be a 0.5% improvement in our guest satisfaction. And that takes us from being let's just say a 1 restaurant, it could be a 4.3 star, and move it up to 4.4. So if you have the ability to do that with one small change that technologically speaking may be a large change, but it's available, it's out there, people do that, so there are ways to make it happen. That's going to move up on the priority list of, let's bump ourselves up and make ourselves 0.1% better and go from 4.4 to 4.5 or 4.6 to 4.7, and we don't have to change a thing as far as training, as far as food, as far as anything. This is like just simply a technological update that is available in the market, and we have to figure out how we implement that. So, if someone says, "Oh, for an extra $100 a month, you boost your reviews by 0.1 and take you from 4.4 to 4.5," you'd pay that in a second.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, sometimes it's easy to overlook those things because it seems like it's big. Like, oh no, it's just somebody complaining, or it's nothing. I know we'll just fix it. We'll be nicer, or we'll do this. But sometimes it's a lot simpler than that.
Yeah, and a big part of it is having the real time conversations with guests when they're sharing this, because a lot of times they're not really complaining. They're just trying to be constructive and give feedback and go like, "We love you guys, we love your pizza, but like this is kind of annoying." And I go, "I agree. If I was on the other side of this as a customer, like that is kind of annoying, and you'd feel even better about us if we did this." And I go, "Okay, that sounds great." And we'll say like, "Hey, you're not the first person that's told us this. It's on our radar. It's on our board. We're trying to figure out a solution by year end to implement for the new year, because this is something that's coming up regularly, and we appreciate your feedback and we're working on it." And people are like, "Oh, thanks for getting back to me. Like, that sounds great. Looking forward to it." Because it's like, it's not, and we say like, it's not a snap of the fingers and then this thing is fixed or we implement it. But if people know that you are hearing them, you're working on it and it's in progress because of this type of feedback, they know that their feedback doesn't go without being noticed. They know it is taken seriously, and as you see things then regularly coming about, that you are going to work on implementing changes, I think that's about the most important use for that type of feedback that you could give people, and realize that you are in a working relationship with your guests and you're not on opposing teams.
And that builds in loyalty, right? They want to stick around with a brand that they know, has their back and hears their voices. But also from a team standpoint, your manager now knows, hey, you know, the leadership team is actually trying to help us solve these problems. They don't want to, they're not tying our hands. They're not holding us back. They want to help and solve things too.
Yeah, we want to set them up for success at the store level, and if it's not something, it's like, I recently was talking on an interview and someone said, "Well, do you have a store that's just as busy as this one, so I'm sure the manager makes like the same bonus." And I said, "Well, actually, no, but theoretically they could." And she's like, "Well, how is that if your rent is so much higher over there that you're making a lot less money, even though the store is just as busy and their numbers are the same, like, operationally?" I go, "Well, I don't count my deal making abilities against my manager. So me choosing a location with twice as 50% higher rent than another one should not count against the job that my manager is doing, because they have zero control over that." And in the same sense, if you're looking at, the technology that they've been given to run the store, if that's what's failing the customer, I certainly can't hold that against them. That's like, we're not giving them a solution to make that operationally work or make that easier and smoother. So, whether we're getting that feedback from them or saying like, hey, this is where some of this always falls apart. If there was a way to do this, I think it would be helpful. If we're hearing that from them, we're hearing that from guests, like, okay, we know this is where we have to, there's something needs to be implemented here. And I think to a large extent, we don't get a lot of that feedback that often because they know we're already on top of the stuff. So I think that's a good sign too, is that as we're implementing these things, they're like, man, this is great. They don't feel like nothing's ever being done. They know that we're working on stuff. And for them, those weekly updates are important because we have a thing that's like opportunities in progress, meaning like this is something we're working on. And here's our target dates to get something like this, launched as a test at a store. And if it then works out and the implementation goes well, then we'll roll it out to the other locations. They're getting updates knowing that we are working on it and that, it's again, not just something that happens overnight, but it's also not forgotten about, because sometimes people don't realize like you're working on all these things behind the scenes
Yeah.
and
And it
not
takes
just sitting
time.
there. It takes time. It takes time to do it well. Also, when you rush things, there's nothing worse than a too quick of a rollout on something, which makes it doomed to fail before you even begin.
It's more, takes longer, has way more issues because we wanted it fast.
Yeah. And that's something that with our technology partners, I'm very vocal and very clear about that. I say like, listen, if we like how this goes, I'm telling you, you're going to get our whole account. You're going to get every location. You need to give me a soft launch here with one of these. I'm not paying you and signing on for every location. Like, and I get why, because they want the commitment and know that they got this sale. I go, but if it works, why would I not? It's too much to manage a rollout across all these, like every location all at once. It makes it too hard to manage. So like when we put innovation, we did it at 3 locations for different reasons. And we said, let's see how this goes. One was really dine-in heavy, one was really takeout heavy, and one was our busiest restaurant. And so we were like, okay, well, this is going to give us an idea of the type of feedback, the volume of feedback, and how to manage it before we put it at every other location. And so once that was done with the trial, I was like, this is great. Let's put it everywhere. Very simple.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the relationship between vendor and operator should be a partnership, right? Or they should have to get some things up front, and we'll see how it goes, and then we'll expand later. But I know it's attractive to see seven locations, trucks. We got you got franchises on the way. That's a great account for a salesperson. However, they need to put some skin in the game as well too. So let's test it out, or give me some trial months, or give me a sample product, or give me a tester. If you want me to do your kiosk, let me get one, and let's see how it works, and then we can grow from there.
Yeah, and it gives you
I
a
think
good
that's
idea of
great
how
advice.
good their support is too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice for a new operator. Make it a partnership.
Yeah, and you have to find people that are willing to do that, and that trial period gives you an idea of how good their support is.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
I
we'll
like
help
that.
you with your onboarding. Sure. We'll
Yeah.
see.
And then it's like, oh, well, we would waive the onboarding fee, but I thought you were going to bring all the locations on, and then it's one, and they want $1,000. Like, come on, dude. Like,
Right.
work with me here. I've seen it.
Yeah,
I've seen
exactly.
this a long time.
You know how that goes. And then you realize, oh, I got myself into a month's worth of work to get this really going, and I've learned my lesson on that too, where I'm like, I truly like, we're going to implement your solution. Thank you. I don't know when, because it's in the implementation timeline that we have of all these other things going. And I know how much commitment to making a software be implemented correctly takes. So we only take, like we started with MarginEdge, and I said, before we go through all these features, let's make sure we get the number one thing we're using this for implemented and programmed correctly on the back end. From there, we'll start adding the next step, and that's what we did. And so it's gone terrifically. But yeah, so I guess in a sense you could say like we overpaid for like 6 months because we weren't using
But
everything, but we also
yeah,
onboarded and set up everything very smoothly.
I think that's more important because chances are, if you don't do it smoothly, it's just going to be another tool that you're not using, but you're still paying for.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing I see. And now that we have all this terrific data coming in on everything, it's the next phase of this, which is like, I wasn't worried about this initially, but now it's on the board where you go, how do we use all that data? Like, what are we going to do with this now to become a better business? And if we're worrying about that on day one, you're just going to get bogged down, because first you got to make sure everything is working and you're actually getting this data. And then you're figuring out like, okay, now we have all this. How do we use this to our benefit now that we're collecting it in such a way that it's here and it's usable? But what are we using it for? How are we going to use that? What's the system around collecting this, analyzing it, and then putting things to work by using it? And, again, that's the hardest part. I think pizza people probably understand this better than most industries, that patience is the most important thing, because patience is, when you're a baker, which is what pizza makers are. We are bakers. When you are making great dough and you make great pizza, you can't rush it. And so you have, like, the great people understand the process, they understand the system, they understand repeatability, and they have to understand patience in order to make great pizza. And so if you apply that to all the other parts of your business, it will keep you from getting too stressed out and losing your mind, because everything takes longer than you want, but you just got to get used to it.
Is that the same with ice cream?
No, ice cream is instant gratification.
Tell me about that, because that was cool. I'm looking at Mujo's and I'm like, dude, this looks fun.
Yeah, it was. I'll tell you, I wish that I would say like, oh, we worked with some of the best consultants from one of the big five, and they gave us all this market research and all this industry insights of where everything is going, and told me that this is the move. But really, it was me on a lot of truck events, looking out the back door of our truck and seeing an ice cream truck pull up behind us. So so in the sense, it was real time data and proof of like demand, and then it just got instincts. When you do that, you got to trust yourself. And I go, man, one of the reasons why we're so successful in mobile and catering is because I believe this. What separates us, you could say, oh, we have great service. Like, you have to have great service. We have great product. You have to have a great product. So, okay, everybody that's competing with me, if you want to consider competition, anyone who's out there in the market has already got to be doing those things if they're even in this conversation to begin with. So the real differentiator is end-to-end service, meaning, because I come from a more corporate background, I understand speed to lead and process professionalism, which are a lot of the customers that we get because we were working with corporate bookings and these things. I understand their world and how the inner workings of those buildings operate and what they expect from their vendors. I would say 50% or more of food trucks don't operate with that same mentality. And so we will beat you every time based on that, just to start. And that was always my goal, which was, we're going to be the fastest reply, we have a phone system, we have automated responses, we have a pipeline inside of our email that we use a CRM. We are going to track these leads, we're going to track these conversations, we're going to keep everything in one place. We're going to do this like the businesses that I know and helped grow. We're going to run our food truck business and catering business that way. And everyone, like, I gotta tell you, like, 8 out of 10 emails or leads that come into us, the first response is, thanks so much for getting back to me so quickly. And I tell everyone, I go, do you see that? That is what happens, so it's like they haven't even read anything and they already want to work with us, because others aren't doing that, and you have to do that. And so to me, that's the other part of it, is the speed to the guest, like the customer, speed to lead, and we will close more business on that alone, and trust. And so I just had that instinct of that, knowing that that was so important. And so being on these events when we grew faster than you could have even anticipated in our volume, I ended up working a lot of them because I'm like, we don't have enough people. Like, we got to be hiring, like, so I'd be on these, open the truck door. We're trying to get some air. You look out the back, ice cream truck again. And so my point in that was, okay, if people already want to work with us, we have all these existing customers that come to us year after year. We need to be able to offer something different to them or more to them, because that is going to take the simplicity of them planning their events to a whole nother level. They get to us. We're the fastest to answer. We say, oh, by the way, have you seen our new ice cream truck? If you're looking to add dessert to your event, and we know you are because you had ice cream at your event last year, you can book both of those through us now in our one-of-a-kind vehicle that nobody's ever had. It's the coolest thing you've ever seen.
It is.
And our ice cream has won awards both worldwide and nationwide. So great food, great ice cream, great service in a one-of-a-kind experience. And by the way, you're already talking to us and you don't have to worry about anything. We'll show, how our process is, we're professional, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be a no-brainer. And it turned out to be that way, where our first season, about 30% of our events that were booking pizza ended up booking ice cream. The next season, it turned into full season. It turned into about 50%. This year, we're at about 70-80% during those warm
Jeez.
months, where 70 or 80% of the people that are booking pizza are booking ice cream with it.
It just makes sense.
And for the weddings, we do over 100 weddings a year. We just raised our minimum, and that minimum raised because we figured out what our average guest or catering spend was. We raised it about what the exact amount would be to add the ice cream. So this is our minimum. And by the way, but if you don't have dessert covered, you might as well, if you're going to pay this anyways, add the ice cream. So now we're catering, we have ice cream catering at all these weddings, and people are like, this is an unbelievable experience. That's great. Appetizers through dessert covered, and we only go to one vendor, and these are both a very unique experience with a great product. So it's really worked out.
That's a win-win. They save some money. They save time. There's convenience. You got to execute on all phases. That's a win-win.
So yeah, and so the stores that have the full ice cream parlor in them with pizza, the numbers correlate being much higher because there's more emphasis on the ice cream inside the shop. The ones that just have a small dipping cabinet, we don't do nearly the sales that you would want. However, it's important because people come to try our product to book us for events and catering, and we don't know what store they're going to go to sometimes. Like, we'll have scheduled tastings for weddings, but other people will just go like, oh, this one's right by us, let's just pop in there. So we have to have the ice cream everywhere, because then it gives people a taste of what they would get for the ice cream truck or cart or catered desserts. So having them available simply for that is, while the shop might not be having this huge boost in sales, it will with the catering and the mobile.
Building two brands side by side like that requires, a lot of patience, a lot of discipline, but also like just flexibility and versatility in the way that you think and how you make changes. Ice cream and pizza are different, but they seem to work really well together for you. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, the other part of it, like you said, building two brands side by side, I did that intentionally because I knew we could put them in here and just say, well, this is Billy Brick's ice cream that we have, and we can have Billy Brick's pizza and ice cream, and that's it. But I saw the opportunity there where we could grow something else when certain locations offer the opportunity. And I think that's where we're looking, is like, there are areas where we want to be, but we might not have the right spot for a Billy Bricks just yet. But we want to start breaking into those neighborhoods and into those cities. So that way, we're keeping out our competitors, and we're learning it the customer there, and getting the lay of the land and making inroads and building community. And I saw Mujo's as an opportunity to have a third of the cost of entry of a Billy Bricks. And if there's a space that makes sense, we could do those standalone. And so that was the goal, was to finally have that. So we're getting the first one off the ground to see what kind of legs the brand has if it stands on its own 2 feet.
Yeah. How do you find the right operator?
I think it's, to me, a lot easier than the pizza side. It's a lot easier. I hate saying that, but like, it is. The complexity of running one of the ice cream shops is significantly lower. The
Less
demand,
staff, less products.
less staff, less SKUs, less to prepare, because frankly, like, we make a lot of stuff fresh in house at Billy Bricks, but the ice cream we have made off site and delivered to us. So the main product you're not even having to make in your shop, it's being delivered to you already prepared. So really all you're learning is how to maintain temperatures and maintain the quality of the product. and then scooping and following a build. Like it's trust me, that could go wrong. I see people not do that correctly all the time. But where we have in fast casual probably the highest availability of workers is in the younger people, high school, college age. You can hand the reins over to several people that age to be shift leads, and the thing, it kind of takes care of itself. Now, building the business, making the inroads into the community, making the relationship with the schools, the park districts, and doing all that, we do that at the leadership level. So that part you would not get out of that type of staff.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, obviously, it takes a whole lot more volume to to reach the same profit level, and then with lower ticket averages and things like that. But I think I really like the idea of it.
Yeah, the lower profit level, I guess you look at it two ways. It has to me, it's an easier business to hit the profit percentage that you want,
Right.
but your cash flow is lower if you're hitting that same percentage, for sure. Like if you're running a pizza shop that's doing 700 and you're at 15% net, you're doing 700,000. The average ice cream shop's doing 150 to 250. So even if you're at 20% net, your take home after that is lower. However, your upfront investment can be significantly lower.
You're never going to need 2,500 square feet. You're never going to.
Correct. So there is scale there that to be candid, we're figuring out and making sure we know how to know what we know or don't know, and figuring those numbers out. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, this new one, we're buying a shop, we're going to add a mobile to it, we're going to update some stuff in there. So all in all, the buyout, the investment, the mobile together, about 150,000. So it's gonna be like $150,000 experiment.
Like, it's cheaper than getting into a restaurant. That's for damn sure.
Well, yeah. So that's right. So it's like, I'd rather experiment on this right now. And because the territory we already know there's a demand because we have a Billy Bricks pizza and ice cream up there about 15 minutes from that store. We know there's a huge demand right now for our catering up there in the ice cream space. And we have to take our truck all the way from our commissary, which is located about an hour from there, and which also has a high demand for it around all of our other stores. So to me, if the shop just broke even, we're buying a business that was already profitable. But knowing that we're adding the mobile to it and that there's already this high demand for it, once we have a physical location for this also up there, we think that demand will increase even more. The increase that we'll have in ability to fulfill events in that area by having a second vehicle just that stays up there, I think just those mobile events alone during the peak of season will take our numbers, outside of the brick and mortar, should double to triple those. And that's where it'll be very interesting for us to see what do these look like when you pair the mobile with brick and mortar with just the ice cream. We know what it does for the pizza side of it. So
now you get to test it there. I think that's pretty genius. Are you franchising brick and mortar and mobile, or just brick and mortar?
Technically both, but we've
How do you
pivoted.
control territory with the mobile?
Yeah. So we had a few mobile franchisees that we negotiated buyouts from their agreements this past year and a half, and they're off doing their own thing now. It did not work well. There was a lot of butting heads.
I mean, that's in my mind. I'm thinking, how do they execute that, or
Yeah.
protect it? I should say, not execute.
Yeah.
How do you protect it?
Well, we had it very clearly drawn and figured out, and it just in practice, it didn't work out the way that everyone thought. And there was a lot of, I don't know, jealousy, envy, greed, whatever, and all the stuff you'd expect, all the deadly sins
The human
that come
nature.
with human nature. And so it was like we learned a lot from that too, of like, yeah, some of this just doesn't make sense. And it's like, if we're why would we do that? Now, if we were just a franchising entity where we were like, hey, we know this is a winner, let's go sell these, fine. But in a sense, we're just like competing with ourselves here. And so don't want to do that anymore. So we're not doing any mobile franchisees in this market, and we're probably not going to do any brick and mortar in this market. Now, if you're in another part of Illinois that's significantly farther away from us where we don't want to operate, perhaps, but our focus on franchise growth and expansion in the future here is going to be in new markets.
Okay. That's And that's tough. And it comes with a whole other set of challenges when it in terms of, executing the operation, keeping the same standard. Because what I'm learning as I'm, reading about what you guys do is you have an elevated in-store experience. Your real place, real dinnerware, real tableware. You're not your typical, simple, fast casual spot. How do you plan to maintain that as well?
Right now, we're just doing it. So, trying to keep that up is always a challenge. And, it may be where you go into another market with a franchisee and you say, hey, we're not going to try to do some of the stuff that we do because this is a whole new market and they're not expecting that from us. And I don't think it's necessary going forward. But I do think it's a big part of the DNA of what makes us different. And that's one of those things where it's like, well, nobody in the space does it. They don't do it for a reason. Well, maybe they don't do it for a reason, but maybe that's not a good thing.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. And,
Because
it could work here. It could not work. It could,
yeah, I
new
mean, I
markets
think
give new ideas.
Yeah, and I think when you're in a new type of location, where we are definitely looking to get back into the non-traditional locations that we did a few of it, and then we shut those down. And it's not like
Like
an open close.
mall, airport type of thing.
Yeah, we did the kiosk type locations inside of like athletic facilities, and so I won't call them like store closures. It was like we tried that out, and our time there ran up, and we're like, yeah, we're not going to keep doing it. But we learned a lot from it. It was stretching us a little too thin at the time, where I was like, we're spending way too much time focusing on these things that are not really giving us anything back. So let's focus on our core, and then we can revisit those later with what we've learned. Right now, we're in a much better position to be able to do those types of things. And I think as we do those, that's where you think of it differently, where it's like, yes, we're going to give you a number, we're going to call it out. You're going to come back up to the counter, grab your pizza, and go to your table. Like if you're in that, it's not the same as our brick and mortar locations. And so, if we're at a ballpark, it's not the same type of service experience and what you're going to get served on and all that. And so I think in that sense we will. But if we're going to do a Billy Bricks pizza and ice cream and it's going to be a traditional brick and mortar, we are going to do it with an elevated level of service, because that's the difference between us and the others.
Absolutely. How have you seen, being the first wood fire, brand in the Chicagoland area, how have you seen the landscape change in the last 20 years? Well, obviously there's a ton of competition now.
Yeah.
But you have to be proud of what you guys have been able to build, as a family, and say, look, now folks are copying what we're doing. How's that feel?
Yeah, so when we started, there was, I think in our story, my dad always says there was like 5 brick ovens in the entire state. And they were in like your more traditional Italian restaurants, and that was like it. Like, so when we started, what we were doing was really strange. Open kitchen, fast casual, and wood fired pizza in like the pizza capital of the Midwest. Like, it was really a strange thing that nobody really understood. But we had the pizza like this before, some in California, and thought, man, if people just try this, they're gonna love it, because we grew up on the Chicago Tavern pizza too. But we're like, we never tasted anything like this before. This is incredible. And the experience of that open kitchen and watching the pizza makers making the pizzas right in front of you and how fast it got to the table, that was crazy, because, pizza in Chicago was always 25 to 40 minutes. So for someone to tell you, yeah, we'll have it at your table in under 5 minutes from the time you order, when it hits the oven, you got 90 seconds to 2 minutes, and then we're have it out to you. We knew that was a big experience differentiator. And then on top of the wood fired characteristics and the flavors and all that, it was always about experience and about that speed. And it was just really, really different.
Were there growing pains in the beginning? Just trying to get people to understand the concept, adapt to it, and fall in love with it.
Yeah, I'm frozen on my end. I don't know if you see me moving.
You're frozen, but it's still recording. It'll give me the highest quality. Yeah, it's weird.
Okay.
Think of the signal. So you're good though. I can hear you just fine.
Okay, great. So what just happened here? All right, my thing is tweaking. All right. So
there you go.
it was definitely in the beginning something where we had people like, what is this? It was very foreign to people here. So nobody was doing this. And so I think the education of the market was one thing. I think access at that time to the types of ingredients and tools and things that we have now made where if I put the pizza up that we started with up to what we had today, you wouldn't even know it was the same restaurant. So I think that's also a funny thing to see how our pizza evolved and improved over time. And the more people that got into the space, the more competition, the more that got out there,
More
I think just
availability of
drove
products.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just drove us to need and want to improve. Because we're like, man, that looks good. Like, we could do that. Like, now this is available. We could improve and incrementally improve. And it's like, I see a lot of independence and people just starting where I'm like, that's okay. The pizza's all right. But I also know that, like, if they're really gonna stick with it, they really care about it, they're enjoying it. If they stick with it and they're making a halfway decent pie and they're good with customers, hopefully they're not so in love with themselves or their recipes that they don't ever consider, evolving. If it's just average. Like, some people hit it out of the park now from the beginning because they're doing years of playing around and pizza competitions and this and that and whatever, none of that stuff existed. So you're just out there experimenting on the public.
Pretty much. And
You
taking the
know,
feedback and, right there in the restaurant.
yeah. So I think now, though, it's a lot harder to do that because everything is so public with social media and everything else that, like, you could just get blasted and destroyed pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, same. And well, on the other side too, it could give you this false sense of confidence, because it looks great on picture or filtered. And then you go sign a lease with a personal guarantee and your wife hates you.
Yeah. Well, we've had, we had an influencer come in maybe a week or two ago, post videos raving about the pizza, 5-star review. And I'm looking at the video going, that pizza I was calling the store to tell them, like, it was not up to our standard. Like, it didn't look right. I mean, I'm sure it tasted great, but, like, visually speaking, the way it was prepared was not the way that we train people to dress and, finish the pizza off before it goes out. Because I'm a big art guy. Like, you eat with your eyes first, and everything needs to be visually presented, like, for someone's eyes to see it first, not just like putting it in their mouth, like, oh, this is good. Like, no, they're gonna look at it first, and that's when the first review of that product is how they looked at it. So you want them to start off thinking it's great before they even taste it because of how it looks. And so I saw this and I'm like, this person's raving about us online, and I think that pizza looks like shit.
How do you balance that? In the world of social media where so much is influenced by what people see during the scroll, how do balance that? Because chances are folks are going to come in and say, I want what I seen from, from the video from that influencer. And you're like, we don't even make that shit. Like, that's not us. Like, how do you balance that?
Well, for the most part, we work with a really great PR team, and you do the best you can to sort of control what you can control. And so when I was practicing law, one of the things we did was, online sort of identity and brand control, I guess you should say, protection. If people were getting smeared online, we helped them clear those things up and whatever. And even then, which was like 10 years ago, the most valuable thing that you could do was push down bad content with good content that you're putting out. So if someone puts something out that's kind of strange, it doesn't look like you, whatever, if the overwhelming amount of information that's out there is coming directly from you that you're in control of, by posting on Google, by posting on Apple, by posting on all these platforms, by doing podcasts like this, by, you know, just, you can control your narrative. You're in control of your story. And so if you are putting out, sometimes it feels like an overwhelming amount of content, you're now in control of the narrative about your product and your brand more than others will be. And then you can work with people who understand the messaging and the narrative you're trying to put out to help you continue to push that and guide people to what is true about the brand.
Yeah. Good. That's good advice right there. Listen, Rick, I really appreciate you just taking the time to, you spent an hour with us. You gave us a whole lot of just good information, great insight. I mean, good advice, but if I could leave with just one question, I would say, what piece of advice would you give a new operator who wants to, start their building blocks to a pizza empire?
Well, when you first start, you're going to have more time than you'll ever have later, especially if you have a family and kids and all that. So I would tell people, take the jump early before you have all those risks that are higher and you have to have more tolerance and bring more people into that risk. So if you're thinking about it, start it now. The faster you start it, the sooner you'll find out if you got something, or you'll have that time invested to get it to where you're trying to go. Because if I tried to start now, what I started doing 10 years ago here, it would be very difficult on my family and I probably wouldn't be successful. So everything takes longer than you think. So start as early as possible and then invest early on in those systems and documentation of everything. Because the bigger things get, the harder it's going to be to circle back and put everything into systems and process. So start that early. Anything that you're telling your staff more than once, document it. Everything that you're like thinking that isn't important, it is. Whether that's from like how you think, and maybe you're wrong, and that might be your issue. But if, like us, having clean front glass on your doors, that's the first thing you do when you come in. So document that, make it a part of the opening process, make a checklist. It's the simplest things like that. Just document your every move. If as you grow, what you want and what's going to make you successful is others, people say, oh, you can never clone yourself. Well, you can get close enough, I suppose, if the system and the processes you've put in place are your daily actions. So if you want to create more of yourself, you need to make that something that people can do and follow along. That doesn't require you looking over their shoulder every day.
Yeah. And live the system yourself too, right?
Yeah, because you ultimately if you want to have a life, if you want to have a high quality of life and still build something meaningful that's creating something for your family, legacy, creating wealth for you, because this is a business. If you want to do all those things, you want to lead people, not manage people.
Manage processes, lead people.
Yeah. It's the hardest thing to do. It's the hardest part about it once you have a good product that people want.
Man, that was great advice. Thanks again for taking the time. This is Ric Gruber. Hey, tell us where we can find you. You also do a lot of, we didn't even touch on you do great social media content. We've seen you speaking. That's where I met you over in Atlanta, up in Atlanta for me, down in Atlanta for you. You're speaking, you're teaching, you're growing brands. You got a lot going on. I feel like we could do this, for another hour. We'll have to get back for another episode one of these days, but
yeah. So, and I'd love to, I love talking through this stuff. You can find the businesses through billybrickshq.com or billybrickshq on every platform. Through there, you'll find Mujos, you'll find the trucks, you can find all that. If you land there, you'll be able to find everything. And if you just search my name, Ric Gruber, RIC, I'm sure you're going to find me.
Peace and Rick.
Yeah, it's not too difficult to track me down online and get a hold of me. Whether people are stunned that they actually have me respond to things on far corners of our social reach. Like we do have a team that does it, but I also monitor and see like everything that comes in. They go, do you? People think that's crazy. I'm like, I love it.
That's how I got you. Right
You
on
did.
Instagram.
Right. You're proof. You're proof. You found us on Instagram, you message. And while my team and auto responses and things will come in, I saw that and I immediately answered. I was like, yo, let's do it.
He's really there. And I'm glad you did, because this is a good conversation. We don't normally talk, because we talk to a lot of single store operators. We don't talk expansion and franchise operations, things like that. So this is a great change of pace for us today. And I think a lot of folks learn what it really takes. And there's so many more layers to it that we can get into. But thank you for just sharing that today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.